So welcome everybody to this week's OpenShift Origin Google Hangout for the community. I'm really pleased to have almost everybody who's been contributing and working on the user experience and user interface for OpenShift Origin and OpenShift Online here today. And we get a chance to show off the OpenShift admin console today. Emily Dersch, is that how you say it? Dersch?
Yep, Dersch.
I've only ever called you Emily before.
That's quite all right.
That's all right, and I haven't had to yell your whole name before, but this is pretty awesome stuff that's going into officially into the next release of OpenShift Origin. So I thought we would kick off this morning with having Emily walk us through the admin console, so get us into the mood for talking about user experience, and then maybe walk through some of the open Trello cards and see where we're at. A lot of the things that we do in terms of user experience at OpenShift are community-driven based on the feedback that you guys give us, but they're also resource-constrained because there's only so many resources, as you see them all here today, working on these projects. And so one of the things I'm looking to do today is to entice people from the community to help work on some of these efforts as well. So, Emily, can we show off the admin console now? Can you share your demo? And tell us a little bit about how you came to be doing this as well.
Sure. So, like you said, my name's Emily, and I am a user experience designer working on OpenShift. I've been working on OpenShift for almost 3 years now, so I got in right at the beginning. And I've seen it go through a lot of changes, which is very, very cool. And this is, the admin console is, I think, a really good step forward in management and maturity for OpenShift, because we do have people in the community and in enterprise who are running their own installs of OpenShift, and I think, you know, this is very early days for the admin console, but it's a step in the right direction for making it like much easier to run and manage OpenShift installations of all sizes. Mm-hmm. So this is the kind of home screen system overview, and it just one of the first things we did with the admin console was really basic kind of user, well, not just user, but information retrieval and display, and that's you know, that's pretty basic functionality that we knew we wanted. I think Jessica did a lot of the work on this. It wasn't really the focus of a lot of the design work because it's just kind of the kind of thing that you like really. It's I don't know even what I'm trying to say here, but you know, you get like the basic information display in a nice way. You could do the same kind of thing in a command line interface or by pulling the information out of, you know, scripts or what have you. But we do want to include this in the console because it's good basic functionality. But the main focus, and I think a lot of the really cool stuff, the innovative stuff, is in the capacity management. And I think this is something that really nobody else is doing right now. And so that's what you see in the system overview. So you can see it's grouped by gear types. And I think this data is pulled from I'm not sure actually. Jessica put this together for me. I'm not sure where she got the information, to be honest. If she's on the call, she could tell.
Is this running right now against our OpenShift Online, or is this just a demo system?
It's a demo system. It's not. This actually isn't running in online at the moment. We're going to work towards getting it running in online. So that'll actually be a really good test case for this. You can see, so we have small gears, medium gears, and large gears. Each gear type is broken down by districts and nodes. If you are not using districts in your installation, you won't see the districts, so you'll just see the nodes. And they both have like the little progress bar that shows you the actual capacity compared to the current use versus the max gears in each category. And if you, so this is what's underneath the little progress bar actually is a heat map. It shows you how many of your districts are using, like, what percentage of usage they're seeing. So in this particular case, we've got like a few that are really close to being at capacity, but for the most part, they're like in this range. So just like a really good system overview. And Jessica and Luke, I think, came up with and maybe Clayton came up with the heat maps idea. I think that's a really good visualization. And then the same thing for the nodes. So we have, you can see how much utilization your nodes are getting. And then kind of nice overview. So it breaks it down a little bit more than just total. So if we click through, we get like a bigger picture of the information, so it's a little bit easier to see everything. And we also get the individual district or gears, depending on, not gears, nodes, depending on what you've got selected. So in this case, we've selected districts, and you can see there's quite a few that are very close to capacity, and then a lot that still have a lot of capacity. So we're doing pretty well on the districts, I think. And then each district, there's a certain, this little visualization kind of gives you an idea of how like the number of active gears and your like target active gears. And if you've got too many active gears versus like just enough in the district. And so this particular district has 5 nodes, so if you really want like to drill down into it, you can see all the nodes in that district as well. So it gives you a nice way to click through and get information about your system. So if you select nodes, you'll see all of the nodes you have. And this could be quite a lot, as you see here, which is why it's really nice to break it down by district if you can. So you can see that basically the capacity, and once you get past a certain point in the progress bar, it goes to red because we want to draw people's attention to the nodes that are reaching, like getting close to their capacity. And I don't think you can drill down any more than this at the moment.
But is there any notification capabilities built into this? So if you're the admin, and you're not looking at it, is there a way to set up notifications when things start to go around?
Oh, sorry. Was somebody else going to answer?
Well, I can jump in on that.
Go ahead.
The answer is not really, not right now. That's data we hope to expose. I don't know if there'll ever be a notification system built in, but certainly eventually there will be some kind of API that exposes the data, and you can hook it into your existing notification system, which most people who are doing anything of this size probably will have something to notify them. So,
and I think that's a really good point to bring up, is that a lot of people who are running these types of systems have preferred tools that they'll use for monitoring, maybe like Zabbix or something like that. And for other tasks, there are people who are making very specialized and very useful tools for a lot of the things. And we don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time recreating functionality that other people have done better if our users are already using like those tools anyway. Instead, we want to have really good integration with those tools.
So I ran into the Zabbix guys, I think, at one of the OpenShift things, and they were starting to take a look closely at working with OpenShift too. So you're dead on there, as we really don't want to be recreating the wheel here, because there's lots of other products, especially from a developer's perspective too. I think we just announced a partnership with Datadog, and we've had one with New Relic and other monitoring tools for your application level. But that said and done, this system overview is great for a PaaS administrator. Are there any plans to give a similar snapshot in the management or the web console for developers so that they can see whether the gears they're using are maxed out or they're living on are maxed out, or is that just not in scope?
So I wouldn't say it won't ever be in scope. It's not really something that is in the near future for the web console. There was some discussion, like very early on, about what kind of monitoring story we're going to have in OpenShift. I know there was some talk about maybe like it's much better to use a partner like New Relic and make integration with outside monitoring systems much better. And there was a very, very rudimentary metrics, it might still be available actually, metrics cartridge that was built very, very early on that gave you kind of a very basic overview of your resource usages, CPU, memory. But I think monitoring is one of those really specialized tasks that have been done really well by outside companies, by people who specialize in it. And so I think we may want to provide a basic solution to monitoring in the web console, but it's probably much better to have a really good integration story, have good integration points and ways to easily export the data into other monitoring tools.
So speaking of integration points, what is the story around the API or someone else being able to write their own system overview or start to build their own monitoring systems? Is there an API available that you're using right now, or where is that coming from?
So Luke, you want to take this?
He leans back and nods, yes. He answers maybe, maybe not.
It's one of the goals of the admin console to expose an API. It's not there yet. We do there. You can download some of the nodes and districts data that we were showing you is available for download in sort of a it's just basically a data dump. You could start with that. It's in the plans. It's not there yet. It's something we know people want and we want to provide. It just hasn't happened this go around yet. So.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that that I see with companies like GetUpCloud and other folks that have stood up their own, based on OpenShift Origin, their own public POSes or their own private POSes on their cloud, is the idea that they want to be able to hook up to Zabbix and other monitoring tools, but also to be able to theme and take these pieces and create their own user experience from that, from what the basics that we've given them. And I think the API is a great start. But also, I know we have Steve and Rob on here as well, and we had talked a little bit about what it would take to theme this, or to theme the web management console, because the earlier incantations of the web management console had some, it was a black background and people had a hard time reading it, and there were some folks that were looking to retheme it, and I even had one guy who just reversed the view of it in his browser so that he could actually read the old one. So the new web management console is a huge, vast improvement, especially to my aging eyes. And as is this admin console with a nice white background and being able to read it and all. But if someone wanted to theme this themselves, what would they have to do? Is there any capabilities of that built in? I think Rob and Steve are both on mute.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will say yes, there absolutely is, and to back up a step, the effort to kind of unify the UI, so we got rid of the dark background in the management console introduced the white background here in the admin console. We definitely wanted to kind of move to a standard look and feel. I mean, it's easier on the eyes, easier to read, and is much more consistent not only within OpenShift, but across all Red Hat products. So it's kind of the big overarching goal. And the way this is architected, it's all using Bootstrap and less files. So it'd be very easy for somebody to customize and extend the look and feel to their liking.
So there's a little bit of background noise. I think that was coming from Steve. So he quickly got muted there. Sorry. But I know that the GetUp Cloud folks are slowly migrating to the V2 version of it. And one of their questions was around internationalization as well. They wanted to create a Brazilian Portuguese version of the console for their user base. They're based down in Porto Alegre, and they, it's a significant effort, and internationalization is a much bigger issue than just the consoles and all of that, but because you have your error messages and your documentation and everything else. But is the architecture of the consoles, both the web management one and the admin, such that someone could go in and retheme it and rebrand it with the Bootstrap stuff today, or is there still some work that needs to be done? Because one of the things I'm looking today to do is to advertise places where people can help and add resources from the community, because I know there's some interest in doing this. Maybe Steve is nodding, and that's all I'm seeing.
Rob, you're probably in a better position to answer this question than I am.
From a purely look and feel perspective, yes, it would be very easy. We have not tackled changing strings. Everything is in English now, and there's no mechanism in place to easily internationalize either console as it stands today. But it's work for future development.
Yeah, we'd be happy to take pull requests for that.
Yes, I'm sure you would, and I would be happy to gather some. Could you, Emily, pull up maybe the Trello cards for the UX? We mentioned that before, and let's sort of talk about what is on the roadmap for UX and where you see it going.
All right. Yeah, no problem. So these are, I'm going to post, I guess the chat actually doesn't get to be part of the on-air. So I won't post a link in the chat, I'll just bring it up. Let's see. This new Hangout interface still gets me.
Yeah, it does every time.
Right.
One of my things that I would like to see is to have a more unified user experience. So the admin console wouldn't be would you be able to find it from the web management console and have more of a unified look and feel to the entire thing as opposed to separate apps. I'm looking for that in the Trello, and I haven't entered it myself as a request.
So as far as that goes, I don't really see that being something we'd want to do, to be honest. The admin console has a very specific audience, which is people who are administering, running their own installation of OpenShift Origin, OpenShift Enterprise, and that's a very different person and a very different audience to somebody who is consuming OpenShift, running apps on OpenShift. And I don't think that we haven't really designed the admin console to be useful to people who are running apps on OpenShift. This is why they're separate at the moment, and they'll probably continue to remain separate, just because it's a very different audience and it's a very different set of functionality. As far as, I mean, yes, they're both management consoles, but they're going to be doing very different things for very different people.
Yeah, I think it's from my personal experience of doing both. Deploying things on having two different places to log into, or two things is a bit of a pain in the arse, shall we say?
I can definitely understand that. Actually, right now admin console doesn't have any kind of authentication built into it. There's no authentication system for the admin console. It's kind of assumed that somebody who's running the OpenShift installation will like set up some sort of, I think, proxy or something, or some other sort of authentication system, like their own authentication system. So it doesn't actually come with one. So I think we'd probably want to leave that up to the person who is using OpenShift, like what kind of authentication they want for the admin console. And so it's possible you could potentially have some sort of SSO, but not right now, I think. And I don't know how far in the future that would come. It's all speculation at this point.
All right.
But we can just take a look at the next list. That's probably the best place to go if you want to see what's in the kind of foreseeable future for OpenShift Origin. If somebody wants to help out or have input, there's several stories that are marked as UI comp. That stands for, I think, UI completeness or comparison or something, but it's just an attempt to get the web management UI up to like feature parity somewhat with the CLI and some of the other.
So, for example, the one that adds environment variables to the console, is that
right.
In that console? That's not the admin console. That's the web console, correct?
That's the web console, right. So a relatively recent feature in the command line interface is the ability to set custom environment variables in your app. So before too long, we'd like to have something similar in the web console. And the web console is always kind of lagged behind the CLI as far as features. There's a number of reasons for that. It's easier, just as far as development time, to add things to a CLI versus having a GUI for something. And a lot of times there are things that we just cannot do in the web console because they require SSH or file access or other things that you can't do out of the browser because of security concerns.
Mm-hmm. The environment variable seems like a pretty easy one to add in. So which of you actually is the person or persons that are working on the web console right now? And is all the code for that in GitHub as well? So if someone wanted to help you with that, could they go in and edit that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the web console code base is in the Origin server repository. I think it's under console directory. So if you clone or fork the Origin server repo, you'll have the admin console and the console.
And
so they're both.
Someone could quickly go in there and hack together their own consoles and just keep using those forks and testing those and create that. Because I had a great conversation at the Red Hat Summit last year with some folks. I think they were Red Hat solution architects who were talking about hacking together their own app store and adding that in. And so I've been trying to encourage them in their spare time to do something similar. Because I know that you can, from the web console, launch a quick start or build your own cartridge and do all that, which is wonderful. But and you can search all of them. But creating sort of a more app store look and feel was something that that folks were trying to figure out how to do that, and that should be something I'm hoping by the next Red Hat Summit we have someone who's volunteered their weekends to do some of that work.
That'd be great to see. And the web console consumes the OpenShift API. So if somebody wanted to, they could build their own console from scratch with all of the same features that we have in our current console. and maybe they want it, if they, I think I saw the GitHub Cloud Hangout, and he mentioned maybe doing something with like a pure JavaScript front end, or,
Yeah.
I think it's, POS is so new, and especially building GUIs to interact with POS and manage POS applications. I think it'll be really interesting to see what other people do. I mean, we have our own approach. I think it's pretty nice. I think it works pretty well. Obviously, there are improvements that can still be made, and there's a lot of functionality that still would be nice to have in there. But I think it'll be like there's still a lot of different ways you could approach it, and I'd love to see what other people do.
Yeah, I think the GitHub Cloud guys have a beautiful new user interface, but it's still tying to the V1 version of the console. And they had migration issues and time and resources as well. So I think it will take a little while before you see a new one, and I think they were doing it all in JavaScript or planning on doing that. I'm kind of interested in seeing how we can start to get some of the community members to actually do something like one of these in your next list for you, and try and get them to step up and do some of the actual code base to relieve you of some of that issue and get those polls in. So I'm looking to recruit a few more external bodies to work on this, not just have people with red hats on doing it.
I would say, if there's anybody in the community who wants to try and tackle some UI stories, like try and add features, I'd really encourage them to, come to us on the mailing list or the IRC channels and talk to us about it. And we'd love to have help from the community. It would definitely, there's limited resources on the UI team, so if people want to jump in and help, it certainly will make for a better, console overall.
Yeah, I think the idea of also people being able to hook into their own authentication processes, and some of that, the documentation for that is not totally awesome. Could be better as well. So I think there's a lot of work around documentation, and people, especially some of the enterprise customers who've gone through the pain of integrating it with their systems, to get some of them to start stepping up and adding some documentation would be helpful as well. So those are the kinds of things that are kind of easier to get involved in and step up and do some of that work, if you're interested in it. If someone has a feature that they absolutely would love to see, or something, what's the best way for them besides IRC? Is it just the mailing list, or is there putting in the bugs list, or what's the best thing to get your attention?
Yeah, I mean, we have a Bugzilla instance. People are free to submit RFEs. I would say, like, engaging with the developers directly is probably a much more effective way of, getting changes made if they have like a feature that they really want. All the developers of OpenShift are on the mailing list. They're all in IRC. If you kind of like, it's an open source project, and you kind of have to engage, I think, in that way. Where you come to the people who are making it and you say, like, I'd love to see this. Here's why. Here's why it's important to me. Here's why it's important to other people. Here's what I think would need to happen in order to get it done, and be willing to do some of the work too, if possible.
Yeah, that's always helpful. So yeah. if there was one feature that you could, something that you want to get in that you don't have the resources for, what would be the one thing that you would love to get done in the next sprint that's probably not on that list? You.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know how to like answer that, because there's just too many things that I would like to see. And I don't know which one would be the best. But I would say, you know, like people who are using it right now, they're, you know, if you're using the console right now, you're an OpenShift user in whatever capacity, enterprise, origin, online, you probably have a really good idea of what's missing and what's not in the console, and what like works really well for you and what doesn't. And you know, we're all happy to get feedback. We're happy to get, you know, help. We would love to see the community more involved with the UI stuff.
All righty then. So, so in terms of the future roadmap, it sounds like it's pretty open in terms of UI design and stuff. I know that the two things, theming and internationalization, are the things that I've heard back from the community as being things that they'd like to see added into our roadmap. Not today, maybe tomorrow, to get so that we could have languages. I think that's a really high thing for people when I travel outside of Silicon Valley in our comfort zone and start going to places like Prague and Brazil and other places. People are very much on it. They'd love to see it in their own language, which is not a total requirement because most everybody can figure out what those widgets are because the design is so nice. And it is an awesome design, so you guys have done really amazing things with the admin console, so you should be very proud of it.
Yeah, there is one thing we didn't get a chance to get to in the admin console that I actually think is pretty interesting. So maybe we could like just jump back there for a few minutes.
Show it off a little more.
And this is something that you might have noticed earlier. We didn't quite get around to talking about it, but it's suggestions. So we have, and I think this is actually maybe the coolest feature of the admin console, suggestions, which is when we notice something happening that we think that you should respond to, that we think like needs some action on your part, we pop up suggestions that you take that action and what that action should be. So here's an example, and this is a demo environment, so this is just an example, and we have lots of other types of suggestions. We noticed that a node failed to respond, so there's reasons why that node may have failed to respond. It might be down, it might have timed out. This is the node that didn't respond, and here's what you can do about it. And I think this kind of thing is, I haven't really seen it in other consoles too much, but it's actually really cool because we help you be better admins for OpenShift by identifying problems before identifying problems and presenting solutions for those problems.
So that goes back to the question I had about, is it going to notify you? It may not send you an email or text your phone with anything, but at least, and not at least, this is awesome to actually come up with a task breakdown here and show you what you could do and what you should do. And this is where the play comes in. Is like the first step is to get these suggestions built in, and I'm guessing that a lot of these suggestions come from the online team who've been doing some of the responding to these suggestions off of online. But then all of this in the world of internationalization would have to get translated. So it's huge.
It's definitely, yeah. I mean, we have a lot of content in both of the consoles that would need to be translated, and we'd also have to have some sort of translation system integrated into it so it could pull the correct translations. So, I mean, internationalization is a hard problem, and it's not something we've gotten into just yet. Luke, do you want to talk about the suggestions anymore? Because Luke was the person who actually created these suggestions.
Yeah, just and also about internationalization. You know, it's It's interesting, actually. My first real job was working as an internationalization verification engineer,
Yeah,
which,
great.
so it's kind of near and dear to my heart. But it's a hard problem, and the hardest thing about it is that it slows down all of your development. When you try to internationalize everything, then every time you want to change anything, you have to do it in all these other languages, and you have to wait for it, so you can release and so forth. So I don't want to, anybody think it's not important to us, but it's difficult to prioritize. So I know it'll happen eventually. It'll become enough of a priority, and we don't mean to slight everybody who doesn't speak English, but we're still working on basic, product functionality. As far as suggestions, yeah, a lot of these were for things. The idea was to get across things that you couldn't get from a normal monitoring system. Like you can tell if your server, is swapping when it's not supposed to, or if the CPU is overloaded or whatever. Like we have standard monitoring tools for that. But to get an OpenShift wide view of capacity, are you running out of gears in this profile? Are you running out of space in your, even if you have plenty of space for gears, you might not have capacity in your districts, so you need to create new districts. Things like that cross multiple nodes that are OpenShift specific. We wanted to give administrators a window into that. So that's what the suggestions were about for the most part. And there's actually a library on the back end that sits with the broker and can query the nodes, can query the database, and put all that data information together. It's possible to use that library separately from the admin console, and I think that's one of the approaches that's being used right now with the OpenShift heat templates. Is if you want to scale up and scale down, I mean, you can actually run that separately from the admin console. You can get all the statistics you need. You can get the suggestions that way. They're just plain old classes with data. They're basically value objects. And respond to those in whatever way you want to automate. So that much is available right now. It'd be really nice to have that available so you could just pull it from the admin console and you didn't have to hook into this library. So that's the next step, with the API.
So Krishna, you were talking a little bit earlier about wanting to be able to call that library. Were you aware of that library, or is that what you were speaking about?
Yeah, that's actually what we are planning to use in the Origin heat templates, is to pull from the suggestions library and then trigger a scale up on the heat template side. Haven't gotten around to that yet. Currently, the Origin heat templates just set up the scale up group, but don't actually have the logic to trigger it.
It's all about resources and time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the next big push is to get the Origin v3 release out, which should be coming out shortly, but I'm not going to put a date on anything. And that'll come soon, and I'll put a blog post out about that and the details of what's in there. But suffice to say that the admin console that Emily was showing us earlier will definitely be, it's available now in GitHub, so you can play with it now, but it will be in the VM that gets built for the Origin v3 release, and you can start playing with it if you're deploying OpenShift Origin. And there's some pretty wonderful pieces to that, and the overview that it gives you is bloody awesome in my humble opinion. And the UI design was very nice. It's really clear. I love the heat map parts of it as well. So that's well done. And thank you for on the web console for changing the black background into something that I could read in the latest version of the web console. So there's lots of work going on in the user experience side of things, and if you'd like to get involved, this is a good time to do it. We're just through the first versions of all of these things, or maybe second iterations of these. There's Trello cards. I'm going to try and track down my friends and the solution architects who were talking about that App Store idea from the last Red Hat Summit, and see if I can't get them to do something with that, because I think that would be a lovely thing to do, to be able to have custom app stores.